Hello, Modern Jeepers. Mattson from Metalcloak here, and welcome to episode 174 of the ModernJeeper Show, the show about Jeeps, Jeeping, and Jeepers. This is a flashback episode. While Corey and Jessy are off playing with Milestar and Expedition 3 on the Oregon coast, we are hanging out here with the family. This episode was recorded right after our Tillamook ModernJeeper Adventure in 2021. Jessy was away while Corey and I caught up on the previous 2 weeks of adventure, good times, bad habits, and good karma. We share some stories from 2021's ModernJeeper Tillamook Adventure and why it will be forever known as the Beach Edition, the intricacies of driving a Gladiator on the sand, why Jeep is a true recovery vehicle of choice, and Jeep's vision for a driverless future. By the way, if you wonder what the F are these guys doing, check us out at youtube.com/ModernJeeper. As always, we're extremely grateful to our supporters and friends, including Winches, Raceline Wheels, Bestop, Milestar Tires, Rugged Radios, Adventure Rack Systems, and of course, Metalcloak. So sit back, relax with a cold one, and enjoy episode number 174 of the ModernJeeper Show.
The ModernJeeper Show, the show about Jeeps, Jeeping, and Jeepers.
Well, hey, Modern Jeepers, this is another episode of the ModernJeeper Show with me, Mattson from Metalcloak, and Mr. Corey Osborne, Mr. Modern Jeeper. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
I'm good. Get that set up in there so I can hear you better. I got these headphones I've been trying out. I'm not sure I like them because they have to like really sink in.
Well, I can't see them in video. Like you can't even see that there's anything in your ears.
Well, they're red. They're colorblind. So there you go. Sorry. We're getting some for employees though in the shop. We're getting some of those head shocks.
Oh, right.
They go right in front of the ear, and the vibrations, I guess, that way they can actually hear, right? So they can still hear for safety reasons, but they get to listen to their music or whatever it is they're doing while they're doing production. So nice. We're experimenting with that. Where were you at? You're at home now, it looks like.
I am. Yeah, and it's actually, it's kind of funny. We've dealt with the heat and this crazy beginning of summer weather pattern, being out in California, being up in Tillamook, Oregon. I get home, it's rained for a day and a half.
Wow.
It's been nice. It's been amazing.
Wow. Well, it was really hot up there. It was nice, but we actually had some decent weather in Tillamook, which to all of our fans, sorry we missed last week, but we were just a little busy doing the ModernJeeper Adventure Tillamook. And when we're both doing that, not just one of us, it's hard to get anything else done. So we didn't pre-record anything. And so we were just out there having fun, but it was good. But gosh, it was for all of us, all of you out there who have this vision of what Oregon is like, and seen some pictures of Tillamook and how beautiful and wet and lush and how much the growth is. It was dry. I mean, that field here 2 years ago was nice and green 2 years ago and wet. And every morning you woke up and there was dew on the ground, but it was dry. It was dry.
Yeah. So dry that the Forest Service has really limited access up there. And I told our participants, this is going to be known as the Tillamook ModernJeeper Tillamook Beach Adventure this year.
Right.
And you know what? It's still such an amazing place because it's so unique and it's so different than anywhere else we go. Yeah, and again, I'm blown away by the amount of people that are out and about. I mean, we went down to Metalcloak's world headquarters in Sacramento and then worked our way up the beach into Oregon. And I'd never been up the 1 and the 101, all the way up the coast. Places are busy, like busier than even the Park Service people I talked to were like, oh my gosh, where'd all these people come from? Yeah, right. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that was quite an adventure for you guys, though. So where did you stop on your way up?
Well, I had some interesting food. We went to a sushi place in Sac the night before we left. met up with Will and his wife and went out for sushi. Well, something in the sushi didn't agree with me, so we didn't make it very far on the first day out. We stayed at a place called the Ross Lodge, and I don't know, it was out there on the one, just above San Francisco Bay Area. Nice place, but again, things are different. All the state parks, you can't get into the California state parks unless you've made reservations much sooner, like months in advance. So we had the rooftop tent. We stayed in the rooftop tent on the Gladiator a couple of nights. So I'll back up a little bit. When we stopped at Metalcloak, we have the new ARS tall rack, which is a prototype rack. Got away from the American Adventure Labs rack that I had that was super, super low and really nice if you didn't need to store anything in the bed of your Gladiator. But I was looking for a little bit more storage space. So ARS, the guys, the engineers down there came up with the tall rack, and we swapped out the low rack, put the tall one in there, got everything mounted up, got the tent on it, and that's when we started up north. So the first night after the food poisoning issues, we found a little parking lot and basically pulled into the back of a really nice parking lot at the beginning of the redwood forests and slept in the parking lot, and it was amazing. Yeah, it was awesome. There was a porta potty in this parking area, but nobody else was there, and we kind of thought that was odd because there were people literally parked everywhere else on the coast. And once we got maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles inland, well, then there's nobody around. So,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Well,
good.
Nice little place right there in the Redwoods. And have you been to the Redwoods before?
I had not. Yeah.
Wow. What a treat.
Never been up through there at all. And we did the, what do they call it? The Avenue of the Giants, which is, it's the highway. And literally, it's kind of like a little self-guided auto tour. You just drive through all of these. There's a couple of state parks through the Avenue of the Giants, redwood forests, and it was really great. Like nobody really, you don't have to pay a fee to go through there. It's part of the highway, and it was nice to be able to see some of the amazing redwood trees that I had. I mean, you'd always see pictures of it, but yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really cool. So we stayed in the Gladiator a couple of nights, which is also really nice. I kind of get it, the overland thing, because you know what our fee was to stay in the Gladiator? Nothing.
Right.
So yeah, a little different. I mean, granted, you don't have the creature comforts,
right.
But for being able to stay in our Go Mammoth rooftop tent.
How was that, by the way?
It was good. So a shout out to our friends also at Camprite. I had stopped their headquarters is in Sacramento as well. So I stopped off and saw some of our friends there, and I grabbed one of their self-inflating, a double self-inflating, they call it the 4x4 mat. And it's about 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches thick when it's fully inflated. We put that on top of the 1 inch high density foam mattress that's in the Go Mammoth. I'm a side sleeper, so I needed a little bit more cushion, and Jesse's the same. The 1.5 inch inflatable, self-inflating mat on top of that made it perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very comfortable.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So you did that, and that's easy to set up, right? Isn't it? You flip open and pull out the ladder, and that's it.
Pretty much. I mean, it's kind of funny to me that the overlanding guys and even the all these companies that produce these tents and whatnot, they pride themselves in, well, you can set it up in 90 seconds. Well, I I don't know what is the big hurry,
Right.
because I mean, that's great, but literally, yeah, you pull on a ladder. The nice thing about the hard-sided, I will say, with the Go Mammoth setup versus the Smitty-built tent that we had on there before, there's no cover, so we had to take off the Smitty-built cover, which is kind of a pain, throw that somewhere, unfold everything. The Go Mammoth really is 3 little straps, you push it up, it's on struts, and it'll all unfolds basically. So, yeah,
So you went from a Smitty mill to a Go Mammoth. That's kind of like going from a Yugo to like a
to a
Mercedes
Jeep.
or something,
Yeah,
right? To a
yeah,
Jeep. Wow.
yeah,
What
yeah,
experience.
it worked out really well, you know, again, the overlanding market is full of, oh my gosh, like,
Right.
when we were out in New York at the 80K invasion, some of those guys, gladiators out there, I mean, I'm like, wow, there's like a, a Pelican case, like a photo, you know, it's one of those travel cases mounted on the side of the rack. And I'm like, what's with the Pelican case? Well, that's my shower. So inside the Pelican case, they had mounted a propane powered water system that heats the water like an instant hot water system for your house.
Hmm.
Well, he had that portable wise. So hot and cold water, little shower nozzle runs off a propane bottle. He had a 15-gallon water storage in the bed of his Gladiator. Um, yeah, I was feeling a
Well,
little inadequate.
I prefer the synergy system though. One end goes in the water, the other end goes through the system that ends heats up on your manifold, and
Right,
then you shower yourself. That
right.
sounds a little bit less. That sounds a little more like this cost as opposed to propane and a
Yeah,
tank to store your water.
yeah,
Although
yeah.
I was being more bathed in luxury as you guys had your amazing camp setup, which I'm sure there's an article coming out showing your setup and what
Yes.
you had set up out at Tillamook. Because for all of our attendees, thank you for being out there. For those who haven't been there, we have a private property that is it's a former Christmas tree lot, Wilson River Christmas trees, I think. And it's a great big piece of property, and you can have room for RVs and there's a great grove of Christmas trees that have like 30 years old that you camp under, and it's amazing. If you show up to camp, it's just the perfect little spot to go camping. And at night, the elk will come down and nibble on your tents, but you know it's
That's all
it's
part of it.
it's all good. And so you guys had a great setup, but it was between that and the Gladiator, and it was cool because you still had room for your other stuff. So when you pulled into a place you actually have a campsite, you don't even have to use the Go Mammoth. You could use your other tent and your Camprite chairs and your Camprite UFO light system, and
Right,
you
right.
know, Corey was we had catered coffee, but when Corey wakes up at 5:30 in the morning, he's got to have his own coffee. So he makes his own coffee. I'd come strolling out of the RV at 6 or 6:30, like with my eyes barely open, and look across the way, and Corey's just sitting in his chair. He's got his mug of coffee ready to go. You know, he
Yeah,
just
there's
in the
something
morning
about that. I don't know what that is, that 5 o'clock internal alarm clock that
he just goes.
and yeah, it just is part of it. And it doesn't
That is
matter when I go to
kind
sleep. If it's 11 or 12, I'm still up at 5:30.
wow. Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Right.
So you guys made it up to Tillamook. You guys got there early. Everything got set up by the time I got there, which I was running a little bit late just because the kiddos around here, got to keep my kiddos because I'm up here at my house in Lincoln City. That's what you see behind us is our upstairs kind of living room there. And the kiddos it's a challenge to go and also to be leaving my wife for 4 days with all alone with the kids, the 3 dogs, the 4 cats. But she did amazing because while I was gone, I keep getting messages like she walked all 3 kids the mile or so it is to the local supermarket, right? Which I would never even have thought of attempting. She went to the beach with the 3 kids and the 4 dogs by
That's right.
herself.
Yep. Yep.
And
There's
managed
proof on Facebook.
yeah, it is. I mean, it's just that was intense. But finally made it out there. What a great group of people, though. That's what I love about these modern Jeeper adventures is the people that are coming to us and coming to be a part of this seem all to be simpatico, like-minded. It must be the kind of people you attract, Corey, because they're just all coming together, and they're such cool people.
Well, I mean, it's amazing. The modern Jeeper philosophy, I think, definitely flows through most Jeepers, and everybody's really good at rolling with the punches, dealing with change. Our lives for the last year and a half have been all about change. So it was a really good group of people, and the weather really cooperated. We had some great food. Um, the once again, the whole areas where we wheel, just like the state parks all across the country and the national parks that are being overrun, Sand Lake out there on the Tillamook area beach was extremely busy, and
Oh my God, I've never seen it so busy.
yeah, we spent some time recovering a couple of rigs, not in our group, but helping out the Forest Service and the Sheriff's Department out there. And you know, wheeling in the sand is a different deal, and even people that have been doing it for years still make bad decisions.
Well,
So yeah,
I'll tell you, it was, yeah, and kudos to you when the guy came up on that day, and it was day 2, because for all of our listeners, we broke it up because we couldn't go into the mountains and we couldn't do the trails that we were intended to do as a group. There were some attendees that maybe went up on their own and did some stuff, but we just didn't do it as a group, and we couldn't go and enjoy that because essentially it was closed to OHV. So we told everybody, hey, let's go and do our own thing. We're going to do our thing. So Sand Lake was traditionally the event that we do on Friday. We went out there, did the run, played around. You saw some photos pop up. There's a big tree log out there that everybody flexes on. We got some good shots. Corey's Gladiator, my Gladiator were together in one shot. It was a great flex shot. And then played out there and did that for a few hours. Then we came back and did had our lunch on the beach, which, nothing better than that, sitting on the beach having lunch.
right.
And then we drove up. And in fact, if you go to the Metalcloak Facebook page, you'll see the live video I did on day 1 at the Metalcloak page. On day 2, it's on the ModernJeeper page. But on day 1, it was on Metalcloak page. And then we went, and then we drove through. What was the name of that other trail that we went afterwards? That whole
the mining trail that's just outside of yeah, that's a really good question.
It'll be in the article.
Yeah, I'll have to come up with that name. But just outside of the Sand Lake area, there's a great number of logging roads that go up over and drop back down into kind of the back end of Tillamook. So yeah.
Right. And the great thing about them is those trails they were open because they're just gravel roads, but it's still a spectacular view, and you're seeing some amazing parts of the mountains that you just wouldn't see, and the views are just incredible, and the nature and the foliage and the deer and all that kinds of amazing stuff. So did that, had a great dinner. That was Friday night. Good camaraderie, good people. Again, we couldn't have a fire, so we did the propane fire pit, which is always like, are people going to like it or not? Well, everybody was.
It's always amazing. Yeah, fire's always good.
Yeah, fire's good. Even if it's a small 2-foot fire, people are still out there enjoying it. And then we did, then day 2. Day 2 was what was interesting, because day 2 was the one that was supposed to be up in the mountains. And Lee did a fantastic job. He was from the Jolly Jeepers, of putting together, because day 2 was normally his mountain trip. And he did a great job of putting together, well, what am I going to do? So literally Wednesday that week, he was out there securing and trying to find out some stuff to do. So he had this COVID themed game. So we went out and played in the sand and did our whole thing and ran around. And I'll divert for a second to say, man, the Gladiators, they have their limitations, but they're also pretty darn fun out there.
They are.
The lightness of the rear kind of lets you go all over the place, but then the lightness of the rear also makes it a little bit limited, a little harder to use going up the sim. And I mentioned it even in the live video, but so let's talk, because we'll talk more about what we actually did on Saturday, but let's talk about that Off-Road Plus.
Yes.
Because you tested beautiful ways.
You and I both, we were kind of playing this game back and forth of, okay, what what are you in? Are you in drive? Are you in manual? Are you in 4 high, 4 low, 2 high? Like what's working, what's not? And it's interesting because there's not a whole lot of information out there, like you and I talked about Off-Road Plus. And the Gladiators, I mean, the electronics are still very new to me. I'm still the old school guy. I was wanting to be my LJ, and put it in 4 high and put the foot to the floor and just go.
Right.
But the new electronics don't really let you do that. So to be out in the sand, we all air down to literally 10, 12 pounds of air and 4 high, and you floor it, and guess what? It doesn't do very well because of all those traction control type of systems. And you found out that there was like 2 levels of the electronic stabilizing going on.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting because if I just hit ESP off and had it 4i and I did not have Off-Road Plus on, it was if I started going, it still felt like there was an emergency, and so it still engaged ESP, even though it said ESP off. All of a sudden, I'd see ESP flash, and I felt it like trying to challenge the gas I was giving. It was throttling back, right? Just doing this engagement as if you're about to lose control going down an icy road, right? It starts doing that throttling to management to try to help you from overspinning tires, and takes over the vehicle basically. And I felt that happening. You hit the Off-Road Plus, that was gone. And it was interesting that Lee, who had a JK, mentioned that there was a trick in the JKs that I wasn't familiar with, that if you actually hold the ESP button in
Right.
and you don't just keep it, you hold it in for a long time, you'll hear it beep. And that's when ESP is truly off. So I think that's what the Off-Road Plus was doing, was actually making sure the ESP was truly off. And it made a big difference in just, you could feel it engage and just grip and go.
Yeah, it was such a huge difference. I mean, we really couldn't. 4 low is the way to turn all that stuff off, but 4 low in the sand really
Mhm,
doesn't work. That's
mhm.
too much torque, and you end up just digging holes. So 4 high with the Off-Road Plus button on, man, that was kind of the game. You know what's fun is, and we both did this, and then just to go back to 2 high and turn
Mhm.
the ESC off
Yeah, right,
and be able to just break the rear tires and do some donuts and things like that,
right.
makes a huge difference. But it's kind of funny when all of a sudden you're going up a big sand hill and the thing just falls on its face, and then manual mode, 1 or 2 in manual with the Off-Road Plus button on, it's amazing at how much traction those things actually have.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's because we both went up one of the big hills early on, and there was this weird bouncing thing, which
yeah, yeah,
all
it
the truck
wasn't.
guys are like, yeah, that's pretty usual. Like we'd put tires full of sand in the back of our rigs or cement in order to weigh them down so we could go play in the sand, because there's just the rear end so light. And yours is a little bit heavier than mine just because you had some equipment back there, but we were
Sure.
still doing that weird bouncy thing that neither one of us experienced in a JL or a JK when we've taken it
Right.
out there before. Um, but also was interesting is I went down a little bit more in my air the second day, and I think I was at 8 psi versus 12 psi the second day. And while it was interesting, you could hear sometimes the tire rolling a little bit as you're going into some of these hard turns. Um, it was, I think, it added to that grippiness just going up these big hills.
Oh, it's again to go out full of air in the sand is you're not gonna have a fun day. You're not gonna be successful. And I mean what nice thing about Sand Lake is even the little store that's off property out of Sand Lake, like they have an industrial compressor there for people to fill up.
Oh, they do.
Airing down in the sand is like, I mean, it is such a necessity that it's funny to me to watch some of the other folks who are out there failing miserably. Um, to watch the guys in the F-250 brand new Ford load up their trailer with an ATV and some motorcycles, and then try to pull that thing back to the sand. I don't know who they were thinking they were gonna. Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, and that's why
I
it took a bunch of people to pull them out.
well, and I was wondering, I was like looking at it going, who's going to bring their stuff? And then you look out in the out in the field, like further out in the sand dune, and you see there was a whole bunch of people with their trailers there and their RVs and they're they pulling out their. I was surprised. I mean, people are bringing that, they're pulling it out there. I guess they're just confident they're going to bring it back out. I wouldn't do it, but
Yeah,
but it was great. So and you guys did a couple of recoveries.
a
We'll go back
couple of
to kind of
recoveries.
yeah, we'll go back to what we were doing. So the second part of the game on day 2 was actually to play some games. One of them was a cool dart game where the they had 3 rings. Each ring was not only distance further from the main line, but also smaller. Oh, that looks good. What is that? What are you drinking there?
That is vanilla Coke and Seagram 7.
Nice, nice. I could have guessed. Um, and you had these little lawn darts that were super like lightweight, and you had to like driver had to drive and passenger had to lean out and try to hit him in the spot. You got scores for that, and I didn't do it because I didn't have a passenger, but you guys did it and did pretty good, and but it was kind of funny because any little wind gust would like take off that dart. And we had a fun
Oh,
time doing that. We had 5 ties, and they were talking about giving everybody prizes, but I determined that we don't do that. There's only one winner, so we went through it again, and then Barbara Rainey and her guy won. That was
yep,
awesome.
yep,
And then the second one, what you guys did as well, was a like you and the passenger, and it was more for time trials, and you
right.
took off from a line, you went to a post that had been buried in the sand, and the passenger had to put this large softball on there. Then you had to go out and go around the cone. I was out there, come back, passenger had to grab the softball and then drive back through the line. And it was amazing. You guys were all doing a great job with it and going. And then we finally got a chance for our buddy John and his 392 to do it. And he really didn't do that much better than anybody else. It was kind of funny. He did. I mean, he did. His time was fast. And then I went and did it by myself, like no passenger. So I had to grab the ball myself. So I flew through, did it again, having so much fun. Windows were down. So I was getting tons I mean, I was literally getting sand in my face when I was going around the turns. And apparently there's some photos, and I can't wait to see them, with the sand just flying up from going around that cone. I did a good job dropping the ball. Went out there, went to grab the ball, and I thought I was perfectly there, and I dropped it. And I had to get out.
Oh,
I had to jump out the door, grab the ball, jump back in, start going. And I got like 54 seconds. And I think the winning time was like 45 seconds or something.
well,
And
and
that
for our listeners to understand that, anywhere, if we did this in a parking lot, it would be, a dirt parking lot. It would have been not nearly as interesting. But the fact that we're in a back corner of the Sand Lake Recreation Area in some fairly soft, deep sand,
mm,
and we have 2
yes,
hills
yes,
that are significant hills to go over, turn around, come back. So it
yeah.
wasn't like you could just full throttle the thing. You would have bottomed out in a section and thrown everything out of your Jeep. So what a fun time. And I think it was kind of funny because I was concerned that people were gonna be not so into it. And everybody was having a ball, and it was so much fun.
It was, and I think everybody was having a great time doing it. I think it really was a great pull out for everybody. But like you said, this was the great beach adventure, right? So
Yep.
while that's going on, while the competition is going on, um, a couple of guys in ATVs came by and mentioned to Corey that there was a Toyota truck that needed to be recovered. So Corey, being who he is, and a couple of other attendees too, decided to head out there because they'd already done the race. Head out there and check it out. So you guys went all the way back, and it was close to where the entrance was, and you recovered this Toyota, which that was, I guess, a pretty quick one, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, we as Jeepers, we're gonna help anybody out that needs help, and this guy was pretty sincere in the ATVs that the side by side that came over, and he was like, "Man, this guy's really he's in a bad way, and he really needs some help, and he's with his mom and his wife. His wife's pregnant, and he just really needs some help, and nobody over there can pull him out." And he told me the name of the area, and me not being that familiar with it, I'm like, I don't know, we'll head that way, and hopefully we'll run into you again, and you can show us. So when we got there, apparently this is a pretty much a strictly side by side sand hill that these side by sides go down, and then it's guys with banshees. I mean, extended tracks and long wheelbase. I don't know what they're called because I'm not a side by side guy, but paddle tires, and they go to the bottom of this hill, and they just power out of it. And at the top of this hill where we pulled up to it, he's like, yeah, I'm right over this edge. And literally, I mean, he's probably 50 degrees down from us, and it's about 150 feet away. And he tried to stop, but the sand is so soft, it just kept sliding. So in the middle of all these side by sides coming up at 40 and 50 miles an hour, throwing huge rooster tails of sand, there's this guy in his Toyota.
Oh wow.
So first recovery from the Gladiator, and actually first time using the Warren 8274 that's on it. One of our participants, Mike Upton, who has been with us before, came over there with me, and then one of our actual new participants that we hadn't wheeled with before, him and his son showed up as well. So when I looked at it, he was facing, he was at an angle, and he was facing away from us. And I knew that me standing on top of this sand hill, we're pulling up, and it's going to have to be straight line because he's literally 150 feet away, and it's about all the cable I have on the 8274. If I was going to pull on him, it was just going to dig him into the sand because he's so far downhill. We took out the max tracks because he was kind of near a tree, and we ended up putting 2 lines on him. So we had Mike in his Jeep connect to 2 extended straps that he had on the back of his Toyota, and I was main pull straight line with the 8274. Well, in the meantime, we've got literally like 30 or 40 people at this point, all standing around watching this whole ordeal. Finally got the side-by-side people to stop, give us a minute, we'll get this guy out of there. And some of our participants, our registered folks, father and son team, they had hooked their Jeep to the front of the Gladiator to keep me from pulling myself down the hill. And I'd kind of seen them up there, and they were like, we want to hook onto you. And I'm like, okay, great. And not really thinking a whole lot about it. The 8274 is extremely fast. And when you're dealing with a 2-winch pull on him, you're going to outpull whoever is on that other winch. So we started pulling. The guy was getting close to the tree. He was helping us out a little bit, but it was a light Toyota pickup. Through the max tracks underneath him, he was able to kind of steer and go around the tree, and we pulled him up the hill pretty quick. I mean, it didn't take us a whole lot of time. Wife was extremely thankful. He was as well. She was in tears, like they were not sure what they were going to do. And it turned out it was a fairly simple thing. And it gave everybody a little bit of taste of, hey, don't go too far because getting out isn't even an option. So needless to say, you guys were all about ready to come back, and you guys were done with the games and were headed for lunch. And I happened to look over to the right of us where we had just pulled this Toyota up, and there's the sheriff's department and the Forest Service. And there's a burnt up Grand Cherokee, fairly new.
Wow.
Burnt up. And when I say burnt up, the tires were gone. The paint was gone. There was no interior. This thing had been set on fire a couple of days beforehand, and they were out there to recover this burned up wreck.
Kind of in the same downhill area?
Same downhill area, about maybe 150 yards over to the right. where they had driven it off just over the edge, didn't go very far, and just lit it on fire.
Oh, wow.
So at the same time, John Mock showed up in his 392. Mike and the other participant had headed back to lunch, and I looked at John and I'm like, "So, should we go help this commercial recovery truck?" Because it was an old square body Chevy pickup, like 2 old winches on it. He had a boom and like wire cable. They were doing their best. I mean, one guy and the sheriff's department was out there because they had found a gun also in this burnt up Grand Cherokee.
Wow.
So it was a full blown investigation. And so John and I went over there and asked him if he needed help. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pull this thing." So, I mean, think about a burnt up, fairly heavy Jeep, no wheels or tires. And it's basically just being dragged through the sand. It's like a giant shovel.
Yeah, and just digging in, not digging out.
Totally digging in. So John Mock hooked up, and the commercial recovery truck hooked up he was having problems. He had some wire, well, it's a rat's nest basically on one of his upper winches. And so he and John pulled on it, probably moved it about 25, 30 feet in, I don't know how long we were there, an hour.
Oh, wow.
It was a very slow process. And in the meantime, we're parked on the other side of the recovery truck, and they're having heating issues. I mean, they're doing straight line pulls in probably trying to pull on, I don't know, 10,000 pounds. The Forest Service guys came over, the sheriff's department came over. We all had a good conversation. Kind of told them about why we were all there. John got to a point where he was going to break free and unhook, and then I hooked up. And I tell you what, it was every bit of all the winching power we had to pull that thing up to where the recovery truck then could pull the thing back into the parking lot. But
wow.
Yeah, it was like a winching 101 out there. I wish we would have had some Warren guys with us. Chad would have, he would have been in hog heaven.
That's right. He would have been very, very impressed. That's interesting because when I saw it was burnout wreck, when I finally saw it, I mean, literally, they had to drag it from wherever you guys recovered it. Like they dragged it all the way to the parking lot and dragged it into the parking lot, right?
With a bumper pull on a winch that would have never got back to the parking lot. It's a good thing he had a boom on the back of that truck that could kind of lift it up a little bit so that and you saw when he came into the parking lot, he was going like 30 miles an hour. Like he came in pretty hot.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then of course Mike and is it Mike and Tom, right? Or was it so they on their own decided to go recover this Ford you were talking about that was stuck in the sand, pulling a trailer with a couple of rigs on it. I mean, that was crazy. And the problem, and no offense to the guy, but man, when you're going and somebody says go, you keep going. It was like he was going and then he'd let up.
Yeah.
Like he kept going and then he'd let up.
We could have been there, I think, all day long. I mean, we would have been pulling rigs out of that sand for all afternoon if we hadn't left when we did.
So in other words, could have hung out there and start charging for it and making some good money that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the bad part about it is when we all started to air up, we were getting ready to leave. And that's when some people started coming back going, "Hey, we need help." And it's like, I'm not airing down again. We're going to do what we can and we're out.
But no, you guys did a good karma, good help. And
That's
we
right.
finally left, and then we left there, Sand Lake, and we went down south to right north of Pacific City, which is called like a Cape Kiwanda, I think. Drove all the beach all the way down there to Cape Kiwanda. The beach has a different name there, but we went down to that Cape area, which is gorgeous and beautiful, right? It's just this big sand dunes, and you can take your Jeep all the way to the end of the sand dune, but you can't actually go on the sand dune anymore. I guess you used to be able to. Which I'm kind of glad. That was a bit of a crazy sand dune. That would have been kind of
it was extremely steep. I mean, the guys were doing their They're I don't know,
Paragliding.
you don't hang gliding, wind
Yeah,
gliding off of it.
yeah,
Um,
paragliding.
and I've been down there before, a number of years ago, and I don't remember seeing anybody else on that beach. And as we drove down there, it was kind of like we were in a parade.
Right. Yeah, it was. Apparently, there were a lot of people making comments too. I didn't hear them. I was told later that, oh, hey, Metalcloak. Oh, hey, and there's that
Yeah,
was kind of
yeah.
funny. That was just focused on us getting through there. So it was kind of a parade of Jeeps because we had what 16 Jeeps, uh,
Yeah, yeah,
16
16 of us.
Jeeps going down there all the way down. We parked down at the end, and then we kind of split up into groups. And some groups went over and decided to go walk around the rocks and the rocks and kind of the sea down there, see, because the tide was out, see if they could see some stuff. And of course, after talking with you guys, I decided I'll go check out the rocks.
When I had already I had a plan. I knew that I was about ready to melt synthetic winch line to the winch. So everybody took off, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pull all that cable off the
Mm.
winch and re-spool it all. So it kind of was a good out for me. And but yeah, a lot of you guys all headed down to the rocks.
Yeah, down to the rocks, and we get there, and it's kind of interesting because you have a couple of walls, and this water that's flowing in each time, right? As the tide goes up, the sandy area gets filled in, and there were a few of the younger guys that were up on the rocks and rock walls, and they were in the back area, and they had climbed up the rock, and so I'm looking at that, thinking, this will be interesting, and so I managed to climb up, and it was pretty easy to climb up. Just waited for the right moment so I could get onto a ledge and go in and stuck my fist into a hole and did a little climbing move and got up there. No big deal. And I went walking around, and we were all a bunch of people again. The younger ones kind of did some of the same stuff. We're all walking on the big rocks, and it was amazing because you can get to this if you go up over the sand dune. You can actually see, but this Cape Kawanda has this giant rock stick out that has like a three-way cave system in it, and it's like the arches out there in Moab, but it's sitting there in the middle of the water. And the waves are just going in there and crashing, right? So they're crashing inside this, and just tearing it apart. It's absolutely beautiful. And then, of course, the waves are crashing towards you, and it's fun. And there's some rocks out there, so we were having fun doing that. And I decided to turn around and go back and figure out how I was going to get back, because I could climb back up and climb down and stuff and do all that whole thing. And I kept looking and evaluating all the things. And I looked down, and about 6 to 7 feet from where I'm at is a perfect ledge. I mean, it was probably about a foot and a half long, probably about 6 inches wide, right? Perfect ledge to jump off of, and I could easily go from there to the sand. Perfect, no problems. So I went for it. I'm just standing there. In fact, somebody had just asked, "Hey, how are you going to get down?" And that moment, I leapt. So right foot onto that rock. So about a 7-foot jump onto that rock. Perfect jump. And then another 7 feet to the sand. Perfect. Except for one thing. As my foot left that rock and was coming up, your heel comes upwards, right? So my heel was coming up. There was apparently something I didn't see, and I wasn't far enough forward on it, because I caught on the little outcropping on that rock. So as I was going up, it caught, and it held itself as my body wanted to go forward. Well, I landed, and immediately knew something wasn't quite right, because I felt it hit, landed. I couldn't quite use the ball of my feet, so I was cool. Perfect landing. Everybody's like, "Oh, hey, that was good. I wish I had a video of that." And I went and sat down and started massaging my calf, thinking maybe it was a cramp. And yeah, it wasn't. So I just said, "No, I think I might have done something." And so I just kind of limped my way back casually, of course, being Mr. Cool, because it's not about me. It's all about the attendees, and I didn't want to mess up with their experience. Left my way back to the Jeeps, and just kind of looked at it a little bit more, but I kind of knew what occurred. And but I had my boots on, so I was fine to get my boot on. Did the rest of the day. We drove back. I was able to drive carefully. Again, couldn't do this if I put any pressure on my toes. So even driving, I had to do left foot brake, drive a little bit with my foot, but push it in, as opposed to don't do the rotational motion you might do usually. It was push it in for gas and back. Got back to the camp, did what we needed to do to have dinner, and had an amazing dinner. It was prime rib that night, and you guys picked up bottles of wine and got the rigs washed, because everybody out there, if you're on the beach and you're on the sand and you're ocean water, wash your rig right away. If you want to maintain the gold and you want to maintain the quality of your rig, wash it. You wash it. So got it all washed up, got back to camp, and just went through the evening. Of course, everybody we were talking about it, and figured I did something, but me, I wouldn't stay off of it.
Well, for our listeners too, they got to know that I've known Mattson for a number of years, and we've been to a lot of events together. I've been in funny areas out off the grid. Anyways, when he came back off after when he hurt himself on the beach, I've never known him to take painkillers or any kind of anti-inflammatories or anything like that. And it was interesting because I knew it was serious when somebody said, "Hey, I've got some ibuprofen, some Advil or something. You want a couple of those?" And he said, "Yeah, no. Well, you have them?" And yeah, I'm gonna take like 4 of them from you. I knew right then. I'm like, there's a lot going on that he is not giving up. So
yeah, ibuprofen has been my friend for the last few days. It's been 800 milligrams a day. And even more, because 800 milligrams at night, it makes a huge difference in that. And so the next day, Sunday, we get all packed up again. I plan on wearing shoes the next day, like just keep my feet in shoes. Well, I couldn't. It was amazing how much the boots were acting as a splint. So I had to put the boots back on and hobbled around. And with your help, we got everything all packed up. And with the help of our attendees, we had our coffee and donuts that morning. And I went into town that morning and got the coffee and donuts, and came back and got everybody set up. And we did that. We got everything put away, and we hit the road. And then on the road, I'm flat towing the rig about 13 minutes from Lincoln City. It was actually earlier that I noticed it. It was about 20 minutes from I'm going up a road on the 101 towards Lincoln City. And there's this road you couldn't pull over on. There was just no way to pull over.
right.
All of a sudden I noticed that, when you're, for all of our viewers and your listeners, you can watch this, but if you're towing a vehicle, you can't see it in your side view mirrors. You cannot see the Jeep. So I have the nice big screen up there that I could see it, right? Can't see it. But all of a sudden I could see it. Like I could see it plainly. The whole left fender and part of the hood and the tire on the left side. And I'm going, okay. And I'm looking in the video and I'm seeing that it's moved forward towards the rig. So as I am carefully getting my way down, I finally get up over the hill and I finally have a place to pull over, and I pull over, go back to check it out. And the passenger side pin has a little cotter pin. Well, that must have fallen out. And the little pin, the machined pin that goes through the connector between the tow bar and the D-rings or the clevis mount on the bumper had popped out. And so that bar had come loose and gone down and was under the rig. The other one had just gone flat into it. So basically it was operating, the entire thing was being towed off of a jacked angled hitch, right? So it's the hitch mount was on the ball. It was at a jacked angle. I mean, it was like at 45 degrees, but it was still hanging on. So I was going to make a joke earlier about Smitty built tent. I'll tell you what, the tow bar system I have is a Smitty built. And the reason I have that is because we had 2 at the shop. We had 1 at the shop, and it was a tow ride or something like that. And we did another one. And so Cloakworks just picked up another one really quick for online and through their account with Transamerica. And so we got a Smitty built. Well, that's the one I was using. I'll give them kudos because it held on.
It did. And for our listeners, I mean, so you picture those V-bar type of setups where you can adjust the angle of the V. It rides in a set of tow hooks on the Jeep, and the pins that came with this tow bar were actually significant. They filled the holes. They're like a bigger than a 3/4 of an inch hole in the tow bar connection points. But those pins, I was thinking about this later after the fact. The pins themselves, instead of having a cotter pin that goes through like a hole on the end, they have a machined ring. Again, it's a substantial pin. They're enormous. Um, and then the locking pin kind of goes around in and fits into this machined thing. Um, so I mean, it would be really hard for that to come out, but apparently they do.
Yeah, it did. It came out, and the funny thing is, I think I knew in the back of my mind it was kind of loose, like it had been there old. I had just recently bought a new set of cotter pins because I wanted to, a new set of pins because I wanted to just replace them, just upgrade them, right? I just bought a new set, little bigger ones. Didn't put it on, right? It was totally fine. That's the side I did, by the way. The side Corey did held on, was the one that held on. So you can
Yeah,
imagine it's
but
been
I
installer
mean,
error.
again, they're just a pin with that machine surface. Like
Yeah.
the pin goes over the surface of it. Yeah, who knows what kind of side stresses those things see or
Yeah. But yours stayed on. The actual bracket, that is the adapter bracket, the tow bar adapter bracket, that bent on the passenger side. The front of the bumper with my new powder coating is all scratched up and bent up, and that's fine. I mean, the Jeep is safe, right? Anyway, the
right.
interesting part was trying to figure out how to get it all taken apart because I couldn't release the pin with all the load on the driver's side. So I ended up taking it apart at the hitch. I had an
All the
impact
bolts
driver.
out of the
I
bars.
bolted the
Yeah.
bar out so the bars fell down, and I took the whole thing apart, got it all disconnected, re-straightened everything out. But here's the problem: I didn't have a spare pin with me.
Right. And they're massive. Those are a
They're
big
massive.
pin.
And I figured the worst case scenario, I can grab a bolt, right? So I'm started looking around the rig to see if there was a bolt and nut that I could undo. There was, but I had my impact wrench tools. I didn't have a bunch of hand tools of that size and I couldn't get the impacts down in there. So I was like, okay, that is out. So I kept thinking about it. If there's one thing I may not be I'm a Jimmy rigger. Okay. I never have all the right tools. I never have all the right stuff, but I can make something work. And so that's what I did. I went into my worn backpack recovery kit, and which are absolutely awesome. If you don't have one of those, are great. And it had one of the nice worn shackles,
Epic. Yeah, it's got an Epic D ring in it.
Epic ring. Pulled that out, and I was like, "How can I do this?" Well, wasn't obviously it's too wide to go over everything, but it still has a threaded side, and it still has a pin, and the pin is the perfect size. So I was able to get that pin through and and you guys will see, I think I posted a picture, but you'll see that the D-ring itself was on the inside towards the bumper, and the pin went through on the outside. So I was actually just using the one side of it and tightened that really tight, had it against the bumper for tightness, and it was super tight. I mean, I went super tight. And then you didn't see it in the picture, but I even strapped, put a couple little of my rubber, the night eyes straps, which I love, or those little rubber covered night eyes straps. Tighten those in, so just to keep that D-ring connected to the bull bar, make sure there was no movement there.
I mean, that's pretty ingenious to use the one side of a D-ring, the Epic Warren D-ring, as your nut. Basically,
Yeah,
use the shackle pin as the bolt through it, and then just tighten into the D-ring. I mean,
it worked. It
yeah,
worked.
absolutely, yeah.
And since I don't have a replacement for that pin, that's how it's going home.
Right.
It's going home. Now, that being said, so I was doing all that with my sore foot,
With your foot.
with my foot, getting all that done. It took me about an hour and a half to go from figuring out what's happened, recover it, to fix it, to get back on the road, which put me late to coming home because the kiddos and everybody were just waiting for me. And they were just wondering, where am I? Because I should have been there, right? Like 13 minutes later, but ended up being an hour and a half later to finally make it home. But it was fine. The rig's safe. I got to pull stuff off and repowder coat it, but because I can't really justify that damage. It doesn't look like trail damage. It looks like bad juju damage. So we'll have to pull that off. But I ended up going to the emergency room that afternoon. And it turns out, for all of our fans and friends, that I did tear my Achilles. Ruptured Achilles is what it says in the paperwork. Torn Achilles is what they told me. By the way, the Samaritan Hospital up here in Lincoln City is fantastic. Great people, so nice. And on Sunday, my wife called and they said, "Yeah, we have nothing on the emergency room board." They didn't want to use the words "not busy" because that usually means they become busy. But they call it the B word. We don't say the B word here. And I went over there. 2 hours later, I was out with a soft cast. They checked it out, did a X-ray just to make sure that there was nothing broken, but pretty much it's the torn Achilles. So, being me, like I drove myself there. I ended up driving myself back because the soft cast they put on was pretty narrow, right? So it was fine. The guy, he walked me out, and I got in the truck, and I just drove home. And then for the next 24 hours, I was using it. Like I wasn't going to walk around in the crutches. Like I can't get around the house in the crutches. I have stuff to do. I had to do some work on the fence. I had to do some work so I'm going around in it. And we went to Salem on Monday, right? And I was using the cart and I was using the stroller as my crutches, but I'm still walking around the store, and I'm still, we went to Sierra, which is a great Sierra Outfitters, great store, part of the whole TJ Maxx group, so super cheap stuff. We went to Best Buy, got the kids new pads, and there's, I'm using that. Tuesday, we're looking at it, and it's like, wife goes, "Huh, your leg's a little swollen." And my leg was, which it wasn't when I went to the ER. It wasn't swollen at all, and that was 24 hours later. But by Tuesday, it was swollen. So we went down. I ended up going down 2:00 on Tuesday afternoon. And in fact, I was texting because Corey and I were going to try to do the podcast on Tuesday. It's Wednesday now. Yeah, I was there 5 hours. So it wasn't as quick as the first one, but they had to do ultrasound to make sure I had no blood clots, which, again, great people there. So fun to deal with, and such awesome support and helpers. The nurse, Sean, and all the others that were out there just helping out were just great. But the result was now I have a bigger, and I guess his name was Pedro. He came and put a new soft cast on me, and I think they did this one specifically to limit me because the other one I had too much freedom. So it's like twice as wide. I'd show you a picture of it, but that'd be quite a feat to try to get it up into the camera. It's twice as wide. It's long, so I don't have full range of motion. Like it comes right in the back of my knee. And it's much heavier. So now I am crutch bound, trying to get myself one of those knee wheelies, like a knee scooter, to be able to get around the shop. I can't drive. I was able to drive the RV here, and I was able to drive the truck even on Monday. Can't. So not with this big thing. There's just too much room. So I have to go and get back to in order to get home. We're gonna have a friend drive all the way up. So one of our friends offered, him and his wife are driving up here on Thursday, and they're going to be here Thursday night. Then we'll drive back as a group on Saturday. So he'll drive the RV, or Friday. He'll drive the RV back, pulling the Gladiator with the makeshift pin and the Warren pin. But hats off to Warren. Fantastic product because it worked great, and I have every confidence. Somebody said I don't have confidence in that. I have every confidence in that pin doing as good as the previous pin would have.
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario with that, you could put a little bit of Loctite on it and seize the thing in there. But no, your foot, and you had made the comment. You were like, I'm not going to complain about it. Number of years or a couple of years ago when I broke my foot. It kind of the same scenario. They wrapped it in that soft thing, but they limited me. I broke my foot, and the cast came up to my knee, and I'm like, okay. So I came home and immediately just took it all apart, and was like,
Right.
well, this is dumb, and then was like, oh, well, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And a hard boot, there's not a whole lot you can do with a broken foot. I mean, your tendon is a different deal. The swelling and all that kind of stuff, man, it's just, you need like some of those boots that you can hang in a
Right.
One, yeah, you need an
That was the thing.
inversion table or something.
Well, they keep telling you elevation and ice are your friends. Well, I haven't done
Yep.
much icing because it's just hard to do icing, but I have been keeping it elevated as much as possible. Obviously, it's under the table now. The thing is, I'm pretty good now at going upstairs. Like I can do the athletic going upstairs.
Down.
Down, dude. I'll admit, I'm getting on my butt and I'm sliding down the stairs because
Yep.
I'm not doing the. It's kind of like learning how to walk with crutches. Yeah, there's a great movie, Luca. It's a Pixar movie, and in Luca, he's a sea monster, and he comes out and becomes human, and he's got to learn how to walk. And what he's told is just to move and fall forward and catch yourself. Fall forward. And that's what I feel like you're doing with crutches. You're just falling forward and catching yourself. So going up, I can do it, but I was scared. I'm scared to even try going down. I told my wife she's gonna have to help me try to go down because you're supposed to go down and then balance yourself. But there's a couple of guys, I guess they call themselves the most famous physical therapists on the internet, and they were talking about this. Like you have to be athletic if you're going to go down using crutches. And I've already almost fallen, like just slip and fallen a couple of times, just trying to do this. So I'm not even going to try that. I'm fine getting on my butt and sliding down the stairs, and then just grabbing the crutches the other end. But the big thing is like, okay, I gotta hopefully see. And I didn't know this. I was kept talking about going to see an orthopedist to get this taken care of. Well, my doctor, my primary care, is referring me to a podiatrist because I guess podiatrist is more focused on the foot and the ankle.
Makes
So
sense.
I'm going to see a podiatrist, a pediatric, not pediatric. What would it say? A surgeon of podiatry. There we go.
There you go. Yeah.
What would the term be? A podiatrist surgeon? Yeah, I don't know. My wife's in charge of medical.
Yeah, not
terms.
I was going to say a pediatric surgeon, but it's
That's kids. Which that's peds.
Foot surgeon.
A foot surgeon, foot and ankle surgeon. So I'll hopefully see him on Monday. Because apparently you have a short window to like get surgery done if you're going to do it before it starts.
Well, yeah, because the atrophy on a tendon, it's going to want to just keep retracting, and then
right. And they don't want me in a boot because I went back asking for a boot because I wanted something that I could actually walk around in, and they don't want me in a boot because a boot puts you at a 90-degree angle, and they want you opened up because that lets the tendon relaxes the tendon. At 90 degrees. The tendon's more stretched, so they want it relaxed.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's my. So we've had a few fun adventures in the last like 48 few days.
Well, and yeah, I mean we're still kind of pretty much balls to the wall. We're really busy. Jesse headed back to Oklahoma for a couple of days. Her daughter had a shower. She needed a few things out of storage. We have an overlanding group that's coming up from Florida. Yes, our friend Ricky from Jeepers Den has a bunch of people coming this way. We're going to try to hook up with them. We're just, I mean, I was out in the garage today. The Gladiator needed its oil changed. It needs a bunch of TLC. The truck needs fully serviced. We're crazy busy. We're still working on Rubicon. For you guys that have been emailing Mattson and I and are wondering what's going on, I know we're only 3 weeks away. Guys, this is part of the challenge, and this is our new way of trying to get people to respond. It takes a lot of Indians to make these events happen, and we're doing our best. Rubicon, we may have a couple of trips this year. Maybe we'll just have one. It may be completely different than anything we've done in the past. It may be a full scaled down structure of you're on your own. We'll get you out and we'll get you back. But you may have to be responsible for food. We don't know yet. So we're still working on that. We've got the Colorado stuff coming up. We've got a lot going on. So yeah, I'm so thankful for all of our followers that have put up with us and keep track of us and kind of keep us on our toes.
Yeah, and all of you that have been sending out emails. Like, I think we were talking about Yeah, I don't know. Every time we talk about something personal that happens, I get emails like with suggestions and advice from all of you, and that's just amazing because you're not just listeners, but you're participants, and we couldn't ask for anything more. You're right. Like, it's not just about us guessing for an hour. It's about hopefully sharing something that you guys enjoy, and we couldn't ask any more when you guys are interacting because that says a lot. That says you're actually listening. We're not just background noise. Sometime in the afternoon where you feel like you need to throw something on because you don't want to hear the kids screaming, right? So it means a lot when you guys are sharing with us, sharing your own stories and your own tales, and being just a part of this whole experience.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I know that so many folks have said to us again and again, it'd be great to do what you guys do, and it's being visiting Metalcloak for even a day and a half and seeing what's going on. Guys, there's so much coming that it's craziness. Like, I know that we talk a little bit about, here's what's on the plate at the time, but the R&D that happens every day, the changes in all of the Jeep models spark a whole slew of testing and trials. And you know what? There's a lot of stuff out there that Medical could just say, "Yep, here it is. Hope it works. Good luck." That's just not the way they do things. So aluminum tube doors, ram suspension, rack systems. I mean, there's a lot.
There is, and we just did the 392, and I was able to actually be there and observe what was happening with the 392, to be able to share on the podcast and learn some of the immediate things that we noticed. Well, we have the 4xe next week, so we're getting a 4xe in next week to actually check out. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be there on Monday. I'm going to try to get in Monday morning, but I know I have to see my podiatrist sometime Monday, so I'm going to try to get there, or at least I'm going to sick will on being out there and watching and giving me as much feedback so we can talk about it. It's just some immediate stuff that we noticed from the CTI ramp, everything that we see on it. And we'll try to give some feedback to all of our listeners about the limitations we immediately see. But we're going through all the R&D next week on the 4xe, and it should be interesting to see what we come up with.
There's I posted a quick little article on the ModernJeeper Facebook page. I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday. In some interesting, I don't know, crosstalk going on in the industry about, is the internal combustion engine gone? And that is huge. Think about that. If you have some comments, leave them for us. Go on the ModernJeeper Facebook page and take a look at that article. What are your thoughts? We're headed down this electronic revolution. What does that mean? What does it look like?
And, I have to apologize. I haven't seen the article. I've been a little preoccupied with my foot, but and keeping the kids off of it. But did you reference that new that video that's been circulating from Jeep?
I know. This was actually an Auto Week, I believe, initial article, and it has some good questions in it.
There's a video. We'll try to put it in the show notes if you haven't already seen it, but it's circulating around from Jeep, and it's like their vision of the future, and it goes like 2025, 2030, 2035, like where they see, and these all electric rigs and self-driving on the trail. This is Jeep's vision. We've talked about this, like self-driving, two people hanging out. The people are backpacking in the video. People are backpacking through the trail, and the Jeep just goes and meets them at the trailhead on its own. This is where Jeep's vision is. Like, this is what they see. Now, if that ever means that you go backpacking while your Jeep goes through the Rubicon, who knows? But if it can go on a trail, and we've talked about this before, about we actually were on, we assisted with a guy who was a Jeep engineer whose goal was to try to test like some of the data related to self-driving on the Rubicon. So could they do that? Could they actually go through the Rubicon on its own in 10 years, or 20 years, or whatever it is? Who knows? But it's just fascinating to see that the vision they have of these all electric vehicles that can self-charge, share charging, right? Like being able to port from one to another. These are all realistic things. But then
Absolutely.
having it go and just follow a fire trail as you go backpacking, and it's going to meet you at a predetermined destination.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The years coming are going to be very, very interesting, no doubt.
And of course, you know, here we are thinking about electronics, and we can't even figure out what Off-Road Plus is supposed to do because there's no data on
Right,
it.
right.
All right, Modern Jeepers. Well, hey, before we go, is there a Corey's rant this week?
You know, there's really not. I mean, we're seeing it again in these situations where people are getting themselves beyond their what is that? What people say that they when they ran out of talent. There were a number of people in the sand that ran out of talent,
That's a nice way of
and
putting it.
again, be prepared. To be in an area and be totally having to rely on somebody else to come and help you is just goes against everything that my wheeling side of me has always been about. I mean, from Boy Scouts through anywhere you go. And in fact, I was just looking at a little pamphlet I had about the loneliest road in America, which is Highway 50. And in 1986, AAA did a little bit of a promotion of the loneliest road in America on Highway 50, and they said we do not recommend it. And I kind of went, well, that's kind of a funny thing to say. It's AAA, like you're providing a service, and they were like, look, unless you have great survival skills, people shouldn't be out on this highway. That I mean, and for those that aren't familiar, that road literally goes from South Lake Tahoe, clear back across into Utah. And there's a very few number of gas stations and that kind of thing. But the sand, where there's 30 and 40 people around, and it's going to be such a traumatic event if you get stuck in it that your wife and your family is going to be traumatized by getting stuck in it. Be more prepared. Don't go by yourself, number one. And then if you do, know what you're getting yourself into.
Sand, snow, even rock
All of
climbing.
it.
It's like if you're
All
going
of it.
off road, go with your friends. Look, I showed up, and I'll be the first to admit, I showed up without a working winch. It's a whole nother story we'll tell one day. And without air for my tires because, well, I was riding with my friends. And so I, as a crutch, would depend upon them. But I would have never gone out there by myself under those circumstances, right? You have to be
Right.
prepared. So that being said, thank you, Corey. Modern Jeepers, hey, you can reach us, you know, Modern Jeeper Adventures. Keep an eye on there. We will put Tillamook stuff, or we're going to put some data up about Colorado. We'll go up actually this week because I have time because I'm sitting at my computer and there's nothing else to do around the house. And other than scoot around my butt and try to clean up things. Or we're going to do, we'll talk about that. Rubicon, we're just trying to figure out. And we apologize. We talk a lot about it, but the guy who's in charge of the Rubicon trip is having some challenges with food, and we have to decide if we're going to do it where you guys just come out and maybe give us some feedback. If you've been waiting on the Rubicon trip, if you just want to be guided through and not catered to, you know, maybe that's what it's going to be next month. And it's not what we prefer to do with the Modern Jeeper Adventure, but maybe that's what we'll do. So just give us a note, give us feedback, send me an email, mattson@metalcloak.com. You can reach out to Corey at corey@metalcloak.com. And of course, Jesse is not here, but you can get her at jesse@metalcloak.com. Otherwise, you can find us at Modern Jeeper Adventures, ModernJeeper.com, and ModernJeeperForum.com, which is getting more and more active lately. I really appreciate it. And that being said, anything you want to add, Corey?
No, I think we're good, buddy. Take care of that foot.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. And thank you to all of you. And thank you to all of our listeners and all the great people that came out and supported us and did the Modern Jeeper Adventure Tillamook Beach Run. We're called Beach 2021, which I kind of need to change the shirts because I put forest on the shirt. I need to change it to like a beach ball.
Right. Next year, that'll be different.
There we go. All right, friends. Thank you again. And we'll see you on the trails.
Cheers.